No, I don't need it. I got it. Okay. Okay, at 6:30, we'll call the Sawyer County Board of Supervisors December 20th, 22 meeting to order, please. Madam Clerk, may we have roll call? Here.
Thank you. Here. Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Certification of compliance with open meetings law, Madam Clerk.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and will be as required by section 19.84 of Wisconsin statute.
Thank you. Meeting agenda has been presented. I appreciate all of your attendance tonight at this rescheduled meeting. Moving on into public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board for public comment? Anybody online, Alex? Okay, thank you. Number 8, presentation by Sheriff Mirotek, Sheriff's Department staff recognition. Sheriff?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members. It's a pleasure to take a couple minutes and acknowledge some of our staff and a civilian for some outstanding service to our community. I want to take a minute and explain a little bit about our policy. The Sheriff's Office has a policy for awards, and the policy, we have implemented a awards committee. If somebody within our agency or the community nominates a deputy, a law enforcement officer, or a civilian for an award for the service they rendered for the community, that gets forwarded to our awards committee. And after the awards committee reviews it, they determine whether the actions merit an award. That gets forwarded to the sheriff, and then the sheriff decides whether he or she agrees, and then the awards go from there. So with that, we did have some people that were nominated for awards, quite a few people, and the awards committee did decide that some did not merit awards and some did. So the following are the ones that I agree with the committee as well, and will receive the following awards. Deputy Matthias Hulber, do you want to come forward? On August 4th, 2022, you responded to an EMS call on Brubaker Lane. Upon arrival, you observed a female, later identified as Carly L. Donahue, performing CPR on another female on a boat. You assisted with performing CPR until EMS arrived. Mrs. Donahue retrieved and applied an AED to the patient with your assistance. It was confirmed days later that the patient was expected to make near full recovery due to the prompt and direct actions from you and Mrs. Donahue. I agree with the nominations committee that your actions deserve a life-saving award. Congratulations. Wow. You can keep that. I also want to acknowledge that Carly Donahue was nominated, and she is going to receive an award as well. She lives in the Twin Cities area. She was unable to attend, but I did leave her a phone message, unable to contact her direct, and invited her to monitor on YouTube for the meeting tonight. So hopefully she's with us. The next awards go to Deputies Logan, Price, and Hulber. if you want to come forward. Deputy Logan was unable to make it tonight. On October 29th, 2022, you responded to a structure fire on Peninsula Road where the house quickly became fully engulfed in flames. While these deputies were assisting, they heard a mayday call on the radio that one of the firefighters had fallen through the floor and was trapped in the basement of the burning building. Deputies Logan and Price entered the burning building to find a firefighter holding the arm of the trapped firefighter in the burning basement. Deputies Logan and Price assisted the firefighter by pulling the trapped firefighter from the burning basement. While they were exiting, Deputy Halber also entered the burning building and assisted those exiting when Deputy Logan started to give way from the floor into the burning building or into the burning basement. Deputy Halber pulled Deputy Logan to safety and assisted the firefighters and other deputies to a safe exit. I am in full agreement with the nominating committee that your courageous acts, Deputy Logan, Price, and Halber, deserve a life-saving award. Congratulations. Deputy Joey Spurlock. In the afternoon hours of November 15th, 2022, you observed an inmate standing on the upper tier rail of a cell block in the jail. The inmate had blankets tied around his neck and to the railings. You immediately responded along with other jail staff. The inmate was refusing orders and making demands of who he wanted present when he committed suicide. When the inmate became distracted, you quickly grabbed him and pulled him off the rail. The inmate began to fight and attempted to throw you over the tier. You and fellow deputies were able to gain control of the inmate. Your actions without hesitation and willingness to put yourself at risk prevented the inmate's attempt to hang himself. I agree with the committee's nomination that you deserve a life-saving award. Congratulations. In closing, I would also like to just give some honorable mention to somebody who has been a great service with the departure of Lieutenant Johnson. It has left a great void in our office, and Chief Sedera has stepped up and fulfilled his role as chief, as well as the void that Lieutenant Johnson brought forth. It was several months before we were able to fill that position, and we now have Lieutenant Wooler with us, and he has done an outstanding job bringing Lieutenant Wooler up to speed and on board as well. So I just want to say thank you, Chief.
Remarkable, Sheriff. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, then we'll move on to number 9. Consider approval of our meeting minutes, November 15, 2022. Entertain a motion, Mr. Helwig?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Second by Ms. Hessel. We have a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Ms. Hessel to approve our meeting minutes of November 15, 2022 as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 10. Winter Storm Emergency Disaster Declaration Update. And we'll start with our Public Health Officer, Ms. Julia Lyons. Yes, and I was going to invite the Sheriff as well. Thank you.
Okay, so it's been an interesting few days since Thursday evening, and we had the outages that began. On Thursday, we'll kind of do a brief overview of the timeline, and then when Sheriff's gonna bring in some other things that we have done along the way that I might forget to mention. So on Thursday, we started to assess the ETA of when that power was going to be up and running. And one of the first things that we found out, it was really hard to get a good assessment from the power companies at that time when they're going through all of that. So that's going to be one of the things that we're starting to get a little better communication methods as we move forward. So hopefully that will be something that continues. Seven Winds opened up a warming shelter, Meteor Town Hall opened, and Winter School opened on Thursday. And dispatch was fielding calls for wellness, O2 checks, concerns with cold. On Thursday evening, we got concerns with Galaxy Apartments. That was getting quite cold. It was one of the small areas in Hayward that still wasn't up and running. Corey Sullivan happened to have been out though and saw the line crew down there and was able to get them up and running because we were going to try to find shelter for them that night. The other thing that happened that evening is Queen of Angels down in Radisson. Their power was out and their backup generator went out, unable to get that up and running. They had 9 residents there. So that was the big work that we were doing Thursday evening, trying to find a place for them to go. We did get them housed in at Winter School because they did open up, worked with Andy Grimm. To get them moved in there, we used the special ed room. We got cots moved down there. Transit came to move all of the residents over there, and so that's where they were housed. On Friday, we determined that we still weren't getting power up enough in the Hayward northern area, so Wesleyan Church opened as a warming shelter. We opened the assembly room here at the courthouse and started 211 messaging. We are still continuing to get numbers of calls for people with O2 and for wellness checks. We started to divvy that up and really having dispatch getting all of the O2 calls. With the 211, we were trying to move people to a public health number so that dispatch wasn't so overwhelmed with so many calls. By Saturday, we still did not have power on for Queen of Angels. That became our priority. Things were falling apart with those residents living in that confined area and out of their element. So that day we spent a good chunk of the day trying to access generators. We were able to get a generator from National Guard brought up, not knowing if that power was going to be up and running or not. Fortunately, the power got up before the generator got there, but we do have the generator there as backup. They were able to get moved back by Saturday evening. And Saturday evening, Winter School also closed down their shelter because nobody was coming in anymore. They were getting enough power on over there. On Sunday, we were still receiving reports of no power in the southern area of Winter, or in Sawyer County in general, and having a hard time being able to identify who was up and who wasn't. North Central was working with dispatch, telling us they're calling people. If they couldn't get a hold of people, then they were bringing that forward. Law enforcement was going out and doing checks. On Monday, we were still having concerns on what was happening with North Central and following up on those well checks. This morning, we determined that we really needed to get a very good idea of who did not have power anymore, so we did stand up our own line so that people could call in and we could then refer those people. We could make sure or North Central knew those people did not have power, but also be able to assess for their wellness, whether they had generators, food, able to get out, those types of things. We have some next steps, but do you have some things that you would like to say along the way?
Go ahead
Okay.
now.
The next steps that we're really working on is North Central was having communication issues when they were working with with other lines that were coming in. So we're working on getting some radios brought in so that they can communicate with other line crews better. Jump River and Excel, as we move forward into the next few days, want to consider what's going to happen there. They're not thinking that they're going to have any major outages for long periods of time, so we're going to be watching that closely. So the other things that we're looking at is town roads and county roads seem to be clear, but we keep hearing reports that there are roads that are not clear. We've been identifying those as typically a private lane road that may have been plowed at some times, but they're not getting plowed now because there's so many trees down. So we're gonna be working with trying to figure out how we can get DNR or other Sawyers in there to get those cleaned up. Preparedness messages are getting ready to go out, and we started staging cots from Red Cross just in case we need to open shelters again.
I'll just add a couple things here. Our dispatch center received a lot of information, and people inquiring as to what the status was, complaining about power companies not getting back to them. And our dispatchers did an outstanding job. Our dispatcher supervisor, Corey Sully, has been very involved, helping us making contact with the power companies as well as the other services. With those contacts with the power companies, especially North Central Power, we have extended offers on equipment and everything coming in. The challenge they have is it takes that trained personnel linemen to deal with the power issues. Not just anybody can go out there and clear lines to make sure that it's safe and that somebody doesn't get hurt. So that's an added challenge that they have, and sometimes the public's perception is different and they don't totally understand those safety concerns as well. We have worked with Julia today trying to set up other means of information here. We also received word tonight that XL Energy has offered to help North Central Power with local staff here. I connected with Mike Heath this afternoon, which is their one of their leadership members down there. He's going to connect with XL, and hopefully we can try to get everybody online tonight. He did indicate that they gained great headway today and got a lot more people in service that were without. Pretty much the Exland area and Winter area, it appears, were the big areas. There's still going to be some dead end roads where there's miles or great distance of line that's down or trees on the line, and they're just cabins. So we're really targeting the primary residents here first, and the more consolidated area with heavier population. I also think it's important to note that Julia Lyons has really stepped up to the plate in a leadership form and fashion here, and she is the one who has really organized a lot of this moving forward, keeping the collaboration going forward, organizing the meetings, and it's went pretty well for the challenges we had ahead of us.
I would agree, Sheriff. Now, are we preparing for another weather event?
We're going to be preparing for another weather event. Hopefully we don't have to set up shelters, but we're looking for volunteers, trying to get things staged and ready to go, just in case we do have those extended power outages. It's more of a concern now because of the weather being so cold. We're gonna have to really step up much more quickly than we did before with opening up those shelters. The other thing that we did do today is a hot wash, so we really went through a few things that went well and things that we can work better on. Wanted to do that early on because we knew that we'd want to put those things in place right away, as we're probably going to have another event we're going to deal with.
The other thing I'll mention too is our deputies have actively, while on patrol, been monitoring those areas and watching for the residents without lights and going door to door and making sure house temperatures, if they're occupied and everything, appear to be adequate and that there's no issues of concern additionally. I do want to mention in the town of Meteor, we've had a great response with neighbors helping neighbors, and a neighbor checked on another neighbor and there was somebody with a generator in the house. He was unresponsive, got emergency personnel out there, and he is currently in the hospital. So that neighbor helping neighbor process works well, and that saved a life without question. So we'll continue to monitor on the law enforcement side of things to the best of our ability. I also want to mention that the DNR, the wardens have stepped up and have been assisting us going door to door and have offered to help us any way they can additionally. So we've had great response from all the law enforcement agencies, and I think it's been very collaboratively done here, working together.
Okay, we got one question, Sheriff.
Yes.
Mr. Schluter?
Wonderful job, absolutely wonderful job. And it's all get out. Some of the people that I've talked to are curious, was this just that horrific of a storm, or was it a partially inadequately prepared on the parts of the power companies, or inadequate upkeep of the facilities?
You ask an interesting question, and there's probably a little of both, but I think the big thing is this is just a unique storm. Talking to several town chairmen who are in their 70s, who have lived here their whole life, said in their lifetime they've never experienced a storm like this. I know I talked to Commissioner Gedhart and Supervisor Bizey, and they said in their 37 years on the highway crew, nothing has come close to a challenge like this with the road crew, where you're trying to plow roads and on top of it deal with the downed trees. It's just one of those unique weather conditions where the freezing rain come in and the wet heavy snow was so heavy that the damage was just unexpected. I mean, how many of us dealing with the snow seen the blue tinge to the snow that I've never seen like that before? It was just right there at that pivotal point.
Yeah, and, oh,
Ms.
go ahead.
Hessel, 1 second.
Well, I just had one question for Julia. How is this information being made to the public? How are they getting this information?
We're using 211, and then Facebook posts, and trying to link in now more with the townships, because we're understanding that they've got more Facebook posts to be able to share. So definitely learning that and using Nixle.
Mr. Buckholz?
Yeah, I would just want to say too, in a lot of the townships down in our area and my township, we had to get big front end loaders out and big farm tractors to push trees off the road, because there was no way you could cut them without somebody going to be getting hurt. I mean, it was just a disaster. Terrible. And I just wanted to mention that, so.
We did reach out to all the towns, the counties. The Sawyer County has all their county roads, state roads, federal roads plowed. The towns, all of their town roads are passable. There's a few fire lanes that are not plowed, but it's not an issue of concern with residents. They're just shortcuts are used otherwise. So all of the people, when it comes to government roads, to our knowledge, are all open and passable.
Okay, we appreciate all of you and your whole departments, and Julia, nice work.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, Andy, we've got a resolution that you've crafted for us, declaring a disaster. Can you comment on that, please, before we move?
So yeah, on the evening or afternoon of December 15th, Julia was already taking the wheel and starting to coordinate the stand-up of the warming shelters, as I think people started to realize late in the day that the power was not coming back on. So we started to hear about more demands. So at that time, we discussed declaring a state of emergency. We talked to the state emergency management, and I made that declaration primarily just to get that taken care of. So down the road here, if we can recover any costs, we can do that. That's not a guarantee. We have to meet, the governor has to make a declaration, as well as we have to meet the thresholds for the costs that are incurred. And it also gave us the ability under a state of emergency to some additional powers to the sheriff and our purchasing policies. If we needed to do some things in the moment, we could do that. What this resolution does is ratifies that declaration and makes it official with the state.
Okay, so this is our first step in an attempt to recover some funds and move through this.
Correct.
All right, pleasure of the board. Entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make that.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckhold, second by Mr. Helwig, to approve the resolution, disaster declaration resolution. Is there any further discussion? If not, sorry about the, yep, we'll use our clickers.
Mr. Peters, how would you
Aye.
And Mr. Rusk?
Aye.
I'm closing the voting, and it passes 10-0.
Thank you, motion carries. All right, moving on then to number 11, zoning committee chair report. Mr. Betcher.
The zoning committee held two public hearings since our last county board meeting, one on November 17th and another one on December 16th. There were no rezone requests for either of those meetings. The committee did approve one conditional use permit in November and 4 CUPs in December. We discussed amending the ordinance to clarify language defining multi-dwelling development versus a resort, and we have, as a committee, voted to send those proposed ordinance changes out to the towns for their concurrence. So we should hear back from them soon. The committee voted in November to keep the zoning ordinance as an appendix to the Muni Code as opposed to incorporating it into the body. And the committee held a closed session in November in which no action was taken. Jay should be providing a year-end update on the permit history for 2022, but he'll do that next month. So pending your questions, this completes my report.
Thank you, Chairman.
Did I say something?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Any questions for zoning? If not, thank you, Mr. Betcher. All right, moving on to number 12, Public Safety Committee Chair Report. Mr. Buckholz.
Mr. Chair. The Sheriff's Department report, Communication Center report, a written report was provided by Sheriff Morotek. Introduced Deputy Carter Hartling to present information regarding the electronic monitoring. They are going to establish a new detective position and dispatcher with recent approval from the county board. They have established an awards committee, which the sheriff already talked about, and with levels of service, and Chief Shadera advised that it's still difficult to cover shifts. 2 new trainees are almost finished with training and have applied for a full-time position. Patrol report was submitted by Lieutenant Rapinski. The jail report was provided by Lieutenant Waller. Reviewed highlights stating that the stats remain similar to the last month. Deputy Carter provided an update on the electronic monitoring system and how individuals are assigned to an electronic monitoring bracelet. And a communication specialist report was provided. And then there's a tribal enforcement grant update, but I'm gonna leave that because for Mr. Alvarado, because that's next on the agenda down the line. Code enforcement from Brandon advised that he's receiving more horse calls. And child department report, a written report was provided by Mr. Alvarado on the MOU and the DCF and the LCO, and advised that item 7 on the MOU was primary, change identifying how payments and collections will be made. There was a coroner's report was given by Mr. Fremmel. Emergency Management Department reports. Mr. Fremmel advised that he's working on grant applications and working with the Berkey on race preparations. And ambulance billing and ambulance report was provided. Mr. Fremmel reviewed the process of going into properties that have safety concerns. That ends my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And Mr. Alvarado, we have an appointment of Mr. Fromo, our ambulance director, also medical examiner. You want to take that, sir?
Yes. So we've, I think, given a couple updates that earlier this year, Nate Dunstan, who was the ambulance director and the emergency government director, resigned his position to take a position in another county. He was formerly the ambulance director and took the combined position at the beginning of 2022. And when we went through the process of filling that position, we took applications, did the interviews, and actually John Fremmel was going to be recommended to be appointed as the ambulance director and emergency government director. He was serving in that interim role. He's been doing good in that role. But actually, in further discussions with the sheriff and about our emergency management functions, and I think through the course of the interview process, we had had some good discussions about where we wanted to go. And looking at what John's background is, we determined and made this presentation to the Public Safety Committee that we'd like to have John be the ambulance director and the medical examiner. As you're aware, he's been the coroner. Now that we have a medical examiner position, we can appoint that work rather than having it be elected. And we're going to have him operate what is called the Emergency Services Department. That will include the ambulance and medical examiner functions. So what's on the agenda tonight is his appointment to that role. The next step is we have created a position in the Sheriff's Department of a communications supervisor / emergency government, and then moving forward in the process of filling that position. There's no net increase in positions, just reassigning duties and trying to put people in the positions where they can be successful with their skills and background.
Okay, so there's an action item here for the board. Did the Public Safety Committee then, Mr. Buckholz, approve this
Yes.
commitment? Okay. All right, so we'll entertain a motion then approving the appointment of John Fromel as our ambulance director / medical examiner, correct? Mr. Alvarado?
Ambulance director, medical examiner, yes.
Okay, Mr. Helwig.
Make that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Helwig, Mr. Savitsky.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Savitsky to approve the appointment of John Fromel as our ambulance director / medical examiner. Is there any further discussion? Clickers? If not, we can vote, please.
1 second now.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, it's open.
Okay. Voting is open.
Mr. Russ, would you vote please? Mr. Russ? Mr. Peters, would you vote please?
Yes.
Oppose the voting? And it passes 7-0.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, letter C then, resolution to approve the tribal law enforcement grant with Ray and Sawyer County. Mr. Alvarado, do you want to take that, please? Or Mr. Buckholz, whichever. Okay.
Yes, for a number of years, the county has worked with LCO on a cooperative law enforcement grant. And this year, we're taking a little bit different position, working with the LCO on this, in that we are going to be a conduit for the grant application. We'll file it, but it really will fund an LCO animal control program. They will receive the grant funds and utilize them for that purpose. We're just a pass-through entity at this point.
How much is the grant, sir?
I believe it's $38,000.
Okay, Mr. Buckholz.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Weaver to approve the resolution for the 2022-2023 Tribal Law Enforcement Grant. Is there any further discussion? If not, as soon as the voting is open, we'll vote.
Resolution and voting is now open.
Okay.
And could I call on Mr. Russ for a vote? Okay. Mr. Peters?
Yes.
And 10-0.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on then to number 13 then, Public Works Committee Chair Report. Mr. Kinsley is not here. Is there someone that can give that report?
Who's vice chair?
No, that's okay. Mr. Alvarado, you got it?
Yeah, I can give a couple updates. The committee discussed the UTV ordinance at length again. Still taking additional input, and that'll go back to the committee in January. I'd say it's fairly close, just trying to tie up some loose ends with talking with the tribe as well as the Trail Alliance. We did recognize Gary Gedhart in his retirement. He was retiring on January 6th. I believe he has over 20 years with the county in the position. Is a wealth of knowledge, and he'll be missed. And we have proceeded on posting the highway commissioner position and are recruiting for applicants at this point. Airport discussion, snow removal this time of the year is the priority. And we had a discussion there about our abilities to de-ice the runway or provide, put down chemicals and the cost associated with that, and balancing that out with, there's a cost, but it also helps us keep the airport open, so we'll be working through that. And I can tell you, just wasn't discussed at this meeting, but just like everywhere else in the county, we had some difficulties at the airport last week getting the snow removed. And then once it was off the runway, pushing it back further, so it did not limit us the rest of winter with removing the snow and getting it off the runway. And then as far as the building goes, I think a few people took the tour tonight. Everything is still on schedule. They're still telling us a turnover date of March 10th, which is what, 90 days away, 80 days away. Other things contingent on that, opening date, or getting the AV installed and the furniture fixtures, and at this point those are all on schedule and expected to arrive and be installed. A contingency fund for the project is still there. It's at $229,000 from the original $395,000. So things are running as best they can right now. For the most part, the building's enclosed. There are still some windows yet to be installed. We saw, most of the offices and interior rooms are framed in. Some are beyond framed in. But yeah, there'll be a lot of work to get done, but everything looks pretty good.
And with our highway commissioner leaving January 6th, do we have an interim person or something we're gonna put in place?
Yep, the operations supervisor, Brad Bizey, will be the interim.
Okay, Mr. Howick.
Andy, what do you mean by turning it over to us on March 10th?
That's
After
when
the tour tonight, that seems,
yeah, it does seem optimistic, but they have a pretty well-run construction schedule, so we're hoping that stays the timeline. What that means, though, is that that's when we should have access to the new construction and start the move-in process. And there's about a 10-day, 14-day window from the date we take over there till they start working in here. Yep. I know, talking with the judicial assistant today, they had a meeting this morning and started working on the calendar to choreograph that transition to the new courtroom.
So we have an election for the second judge then coming up as well?
Yes, papers, if you want to run for a judge, you can take out papers right now and turn them in by, I think, by the January 2nd? 3rd?
Okay.
Yep. And there'll be a spring election then for the second
Okay,
judge.
thank you, Andy. Anything else for the Public Works? If not, then we'll move on to number 14, Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee, Chair Report, Mr. Betcher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the committee held its monthly meeting on Wednesday, December 7th. The LCO UTV ordinance that was mentioned by Andy, I was told that they are in further discussion with some of the neighboring towns at this time, so it is moving forward. Gross timber sales are at 1.5 million for the year, with more projected in December, but we might fall slightly short of our targeted goal of 1.85 million. Timber sale inspections are on track, and recons are actually 50% ahead of our yearly goal. County surveyor reports that some mapping in and around Draper is off by as much as 400 to 500 feet in some areas, and they are working to correct it by this summer. The tree sales are in full swing and can be ordered through the county website. Pending your questions, that completes my report.
Okay, anything for Land, Water? If not, thank you, Mr. Betcher. Okay, moving on to number 15, Health and Human Services Board Report, Chair Report.
I can take that one as well, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman. The HHS Board held its monthly meeting on Tuesday, December 6th. Child Protective Services caseworkers are currently down from 5 to 3, which is 40%. Public Health reports that COVID numbers continue to remain low, while other respiratory viruses, especially influenza, are on the rise. And Round Lake Town is conducting a groundwater study. They've already tested 87 households with a goal of 120 to complete their study. There's been a few cases of elevated manganese and lead, but otherwise the groundwater is good. Pending your questions, that completes my report.
Thank you, sir. Okay, if there's no further questions, then we'll move on to number 16, Finance Committee Chair Report. Okay, and that was for Mr. Kinsley as well. Who's our Vice Chair in Finance? Yep, nope, that's great, Mr. Rager. Okay, Andy, Finance Committee.
I think we'll cover most of it.
Under yours? Okay, all right. All right, so then we move on to 16B. It's a resolution approving county signatory authority. Can you explain that for us, Andy, please?
Sure, and actually, kind of where this started is that during my time here, I haven't seen a lot of necessarily what I would consider a lot of the contracts to review and approve. Talked to the chairman about how many he's signed, and it seemed a little light that maybe we needed just to tighten up our contract approval process. Because as departments enter or have contracts, grant agreements, we do want the opportunity to review them. If we need be, have council review them, and then make sure the appropriate person who's able to can sign on behalf of the county. So number 2 there is the approval form that I developed just to have something to document contracts. And this is also helpful at the end of the year when the auditors want to look through our expenses. They can find a contract to back up what we're expending funds on. But then in discussions with corp counsel about and just having them review the contract approval form, they raised the issue of just making sure we have something that authorizes the county administrator to sign certain documents. There are certain things that the chair and the county clerk have to sign, but there's a number of other ones that could be signed by either one. So this would, and I believe based on what I found from past prior administrator, was signing a number of just day-to-day contracts like the garbage contract or other service provider type contracts. You know, there's other things like county administrator can't borrow money on behalf of the county or buy property on behalf of the county. But these would be more of the day-to-day things just to, I guess, essentially ratify my signature on those types of things when they come up. So you would be acting on the resolution for approving county signatory authority.
Yep, and this has passed through the Finance Committee and recommended to the full board.
Yep.
So, entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Ms. Hessel?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Righeimer, approving the resolution, approving county signatory authority. Is there any further discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, can we open the polls? Okay, vote, please.
Mr. Rusk?
I think he lost his internet connection.
Okay, Mr. Peters?
I vote aye.
10-0.
Okay, motion carries, thank you. All right, 16C, resolution to consider a county investment policy. Mr. Alvarado, please.
Yes, this is another item that came about in the last couple of months. Compared to a year ago when we weren't getting any return on our money, the interest rates have increased, so now there's actually some decent returns on CDs or the state investment pool or WISC, which we have some of our funds in for the building project, which brought to the question of how we are investing our county funds. Again, talking with some other similar counties, they have an investment policy in place that guides the actions of the county as to what can be, where and how those monies can be invested to generate a return that falls within the state statutes. So a lot of what's in this policy is based on what's allowable in state statute. I brought this to the committee with the intent of having an investment committee that would take care of those actions. The Finance Committee decided that it would be best for the Finance Committee to act as the investment committee. And so the resolution establishes an investment policy. Item 2 under there is the original proposal. And then item 3 is the amended investment policy that puts the Finance Committee as the investment committee. So my recommendation would be somebody to amend the resolution to add in or to include the amended investment policy,
Mhm.
and then you can take
So we
action on
can
the
approve
resolution.
the resolution that amends the policy.
You want to, before you approve the resolution, I would amend it to make sure that's the amended investment policy that's attached to the resolution.
And obviously pass through finance and recommended to come here for.
Yep.
I will look at our finance committee for this. Ms. Hessel,
I will make a motion to approve the amendment attached to the investment policy.
I'll second.
okay, thank you. Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Righeimer to approve the resolution and amendment for the investment policy. Good with that? Okay, is there any further discussion?
I have a,
Yes, Mr. Betcher.
yeah, Andy, would this include, any or all monies, received through the carbon credit?
This would cover all monies under the management of the county, or under the control of the county. So at the point when the carbon credit money were to be received, yes, the investment policy would cover that money.
Okay, I just was reading, it says all, except for funds in certain restricted and special, funds, so I didn't know if that was included. Okay, thank you.
Yep, I mean, you can't, just to clarify, so if it's in a restricted fund or is governed by some rules that, I'm trying to think of an example of this. Most of our monies have to be segregated, like the opioid money, but doesn't limit how you could invest it. But there might be monies that you can't, well, just like, bond money. Because of arbitrage, they don't let you borrow at one rate and then invest at another up to a certain limit. So the investment committee would have to follow that policy then.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. The polls are open. Please vote. 1 second. Okay. Want us to vote again?
Now, hold on. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Peters, would you vote please?
I vote aye.
Close that vote, and it is 10-0.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, 16D then. Personnel plan, pay grid, and wage adjustment. Discussion and possible action. Mr. Alvarado?
Yes, so with the budget adopted last month, we did not address the 2023 wage and personnel levels. I had pulled that back. At that point, we had not entered into negotiations with the union, and we were going to try to have that completed before we addressed the rest of the employee wages, but at this point, we don't expect to have a union contract until sometime in 2023. So we considered at the finance committee and also the administrative committee what we wanted to do with non-represented employees. And the resolution provides a recommendation of a 2% wage adjustment to all non-represented employees effective the first full payroll of 2023, and an additional 1% wage adjustment to those same employees on the first full payroll of July 1st. And so the resolution covers the increases, and then what's attached as supporting is the adjusted pay grids, how they'll look as of the first payroll in the first payroll in January and the first payroll in July, and then the full-time equivalent employee counts by department for 2023.
So this is a 3% increase?
2 and 1.
2 and 1. 2 initially and then 1 in July, you
Yes.
said. Okay. Ms. Hessel?
I make a motion to approve the resolution for the pay increase.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Righeimer, approving the 2023 wage increase resolution.
And the vote is open.
Voting is open.
Mr. Peters? Mr. Peters, would you like to cast a vote?
I vote aye. Sorry.
10-0, please.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on then to number 17, Economic Development UW Extension. And that chair is. Oh,
On the
yes.
vice, I'm ready for that
Thank
one.
you, Mr. Righeimer.
I am ready for that one. We met
Thank
on,
you, sir.
we met on
Vice
December,
Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. We met on December 5th. Edward Lakes and Visitors Convention Bureau submitted a written report. Northwest Regional Planning Commission, Mr. Pearson provided a review of their activities. They had their annual meeting on December 7th at Flat Creek. Several bounce back recipients spoke at that meeting. This program is wrapping up December 27th. They've had 10 inquiries since September regarding the revolving loan fund program. Economic Development Report, Ms. Barrito Ross provided a report on the activities of the Sawyer County LCO Economic Development Committee. They're improving their website, they said. They had a placemaking event at LCO, which about 12 people attended. They welcomed Andy Alvarado as a new member at large on their board. And she reported that they have some grant funds available for entrepreneurs, and they advertised that in the paper. There was a library update, written reports were provided. Ms. Link Jones provided a calendar of events and advised that the library is applying for new grant funds for specific projects, and they are also sending out holiday fundraising letter. The motorized, non-motorized trail report was given by Ms. LaRue, and she reported that they are transitioning to snowmobile since that is the season now, and so they are changing their data counters to a new location. And that ends my report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for economic development? If not, we'll move on then to number 18, Municode update, discussion and possible action. Mr. Alvarado, you worked on this for months.
Yeah, months, and people before me worked on this for months.
Yes.
So this is still at the point where we're just trying to get the Municode Book of Ordinances adopted. What you have, the Code of Ordinances, what's there is the ordinances for the county through December 16th of 2021. We've gone back and reviewed. There was a discussion at the zoning committee about whether the zoning ordinances should be incorporated into the Book of Ordinances or left in an appendix. Their motion was to leave them in the appendix. That's what went back through the administrative committee. So the Code of Ordinances is a living document. We're never done with this. And so this is just a matter of getting our first Code of Ordinances adopted and published. We already have a first supplement in the process of things that have already been amended in the last year since this was compiled. And then I already have other departments that'll be working with their committees on updates to the ordinance. We're always looking at updates, or the health department is going to be bringing forth some suggested amendments to the ordinance. The ATV, UTV ordinance, whenever and if that's adopted, that would amend the ordinance. So this is just establishing the code as of where it was December 16th of 21. Anytime now going forward, when you approve a new ordinance, we'll go through the same process, but then we provide it to Municode, and they update the Book of Ordinances, and then we have an online Code of Ordinances that anybody can access, and they keep that current for us as well. So the ones you've already amended or approved in the last year, when the supplement is published, will automatically be put into the code.
Wonderful.
So this resolution allows you to adopt the code as it's written. Anything in the last year is still not voided. It just has to be codified yet.
Okay, so it's your recommendation then that we approve this resolution adopting the Municode ordinance?
Correct.
Okay.
That's just a voice vote.
Mr. Betcher?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Municode as presented.
Mr. Hellwig?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Hellwig.
Do a voice vote.
Okay. Approving the resolution and the adopted Municode ordinance.
Excuse me, I meant roll call vote.
Oh, roll call vote, okay.
Yes, sorry.
Is there any further discussion?
It is open. I'm not sure why it's reaching.
Okay, Mr. Alvarado is requesting a roll call vote. Roll call vote, Madam Clerk, please.
Your clickers will work, it is open. Would you like a bigger call like this?
No, as long as that will show the number of votes, yes.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Polls are open. We can vote, Madam Clerk?
Yes, it should be.
Okay. Okay,
But it's not
Okay,
Mr. Venture,
Yes.
Mr. Schleter.
Yeah.
Mr. Human,
yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Ms. Hessel. Yes. Mr. Helwig,
Aye.
Mr. Svitsky,
Yes.
Mr. Rusk. We lost him, didn't we? Mr.
Yep.
Ringhammer.
Yes.
And Mr. Buckles.
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
All ayes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Good work, Andy. All right, number 19, County Administrator's Report.
Yeah, I'll give
We're
a
getting
verbal,
everything tonight, buddy.
I'll give a verbal report and then get something out in writing here once we
Okay.
get a little further along. Just some updates on the employee front. Talking with the administrative committee, I had looked at proposing PTO rather than a vacation sick leave system. Pulled that back. Instead, we're gonna be looking at all of the employee benefits in the first quarter of next year. Top to bottom, we're looking at changes to the health insurance. And if we're gonna be looking at those types of significant changes, I want opportunity to propose new employee benefits, top to bottom. In negotiations, we did have our first negotiating session with the union last week. We did not get it settled in the first meeting, so we're having subsequent meetings probably well into January. We had Wellness Day today for the employees. I think that went well for the first time, just trying to get employees focused on physical and mental health. I'm in the middle of annual reviews with department heads. Thank you for those of you who have given me some information or feedback to discuss with departments. Greg and I did a carbon credit kickoff meeting yesterday, so that'll start getting more intense, especially for Greg and his staff to provide information to Anu. And then on the economic development front, like Mr. Righeimer noted, I'm part of the at-large member, ex officio of the Economic Development Corporation, but prior to that, I collaborated a little bit with them on the grant that they submitted to Northwood Technical College. I provided a letter of support for the county and will be helping on that. That was in the newspaper last week, where the technical college is looking for to site a housing and workforce training centers around the region. So Hayward is one of the 4 that's been selected, approximately $2 million project. So we are looking to partner with them and see that project to its implementation. Just an update on some of the other items we've been working with. Like has been mentioned, the child support MOU with LCO is pretty close to being done. We've approved it on our side. 161 agreement with Human Services for child placements is pretty close as well. We're still talking about the ATV, UTV ordinance, and you approved the the cooperative tribal law enforcement grant tonight. So we're getting through some of those things.
Wonderful. Any questions for Andy on his county administrator's report? No? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to number 20, closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personal problems, or the investigation of charges against specific person, except where Par B applies, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations. Entertain a motion. Mr. Buckholz?
I make a motion to go into closed
Mr.
session.
Helwig?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Helwig, to go into closed session. And I do need a roll call vote for this, correct, Mr. Alvarado?
Yes, and the clickers are open.
Clickers, we can click. Motion to go into closed session. Please vote.
Mr. Peters, would you vote please?
I vote yes.
And is Mr. Rusk back on?
I don't see him.
And we have, let's see, Mr. Schleter's vote didn't cast. Would you cast your vote, Mr. Schleter? Just let me know what it is. That's okay, go ahead and let me know what it is.
Yes.
Okay, so then we have 10-0.
Okay, motion carries. We're in closed session 7:30 PM, and this is
Recording in progress.
Reports, conferences, meetings, anyone have anything to share? Yes.
That came in the mail to all supervisors, so it comes about quarterly, I believe. Maybe Andy can explain it.
Board Analytics is a division of the Wisconsin County Association. They do demographic research, or they come through with things on, this one's housing, wage, labor force. Kind of, Dale Knapp used to work for the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, pretty sharp guy, so they brought him on board to put together information like this to help keep, county supervisors and staff informed on kind of the data side of things.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we're adjourned, everyone. Travel safe and stay warm.